Okay. Ready to go? Good morning. My name is Don Popple, and I'm chairman of your committee today, which is July 13, 2022. And the meeting will now come to order for the Committee of Adjustment meeting on that date. All those in attendance at this meeting will be live streamed on YouTube and recorded. Please note that the recording will be linked to the municipal website following the meeting. Our committee today consists of Mr. John Smith, who's Councillor Ward 4, Mr. David Bishop, and Mr. Gerald Walker. It's a public hearing today to consider 7 applications for a minor variance to the municipality zoning bylaw. It's this committee's responsibility to consider all information received to date regarding the requested variances and to hear and consider any comments or questions provided. Any variance is granted by this committee must meet 4 tests, which are very clearly defined in the Planning Act. The requested variance must be number 1, minor in nature, number 2, desirable for the proper development of the land, number 3, comply with the general intent of the official plan and comply with the general intent of the zoning bylaw. Please note, if anyone wishes to be notified of any decision, please make a request to the writing municipality. Are there any conflicts of interest on any of these applications today with the members present? And none being declared. Any oral or written submissions received in advance of the meeting will be verbally read aloud at the time the application is considered. Information regarding live streaming of the meeting is available on the Municipality of Dysart et al.'s website. All persons who have pre-registered will have an opportunity to present or ask questions about the proposals. Please direct all your questions and comments to the chair. Each registered person will have up to 5 minutes to provide comments or ask questions. Once finished speaking, the meeting host will mute their microphone. The 5-minute rule has a 1-minute variance. So that's what we're operating on. And if you don't take consideration of that, you'll be just muted. Please state your name in relation to the application prior to speaking. First item of business we have is to adopt the minutes from the previous meeting, which is, where is that? The minutes of the meeting, Committee of Adjustment meeting for June 28th. I'm looking for a motion to accept and a seconder. David Bishop.
I do move, Mr. Chair.
And I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded, moved by David Bishop, second by Gerald Walker, that be it resolved the meetings for the Committee of Adjustment of June the 8th, 2022 will be adopted. Please indicate your support. Motion is carried. So we have a lot of paper here. So anyway, we'll move to the first application today, which is Mr. Greenow. And I believe he's going to be, you got him hooked up, Ilana? Drag Lake. We got part of his name up there, but we're missing the how part.
Good morning, Andrew. Can you please turn on your video and your audio settings?
Good morning, Danielle. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank
We
you.
can hear you, but we can't see you.
No, and I'm on my phone and it's acting up. The video.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
My apologies.
That's okay. You're asking, there's four potential variances that are listed in your request. Is that correct? I believe the fourth one's already, the shed's already been removed, if that's not, I'm sure that's correct. Could you comment on that? Mr. Greeno?
Yes, are you asking Barrett Greenhow that? I
No, I'm
missed
just
signing
saying
it.
the fourth variance is for permit an accessory building to have an interior sideline, but the shed's already been removed. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That's correct. So we won't have to deal with that.
Well,
Okay, so if you want to start the conversation off and elaborate a bit on what your program is. Some of us, I don't know if Mr. Walker has been
Oh,
there.
yeah.
Everyone has visited your property, so we know exactly what you're talking about, but if you could start the conversation off, we'll carry on. I'm sure there'll be some questions. It's the microphone's yours, Mr. Greeno. So far, it doesn't work.
I'm not sure if Barrett's mic is working.
He's muted himself. There you go.
is Barrett the applicant?
Yes, he is.
I'm here. Good
Okay.
morning.
May you turn on
Gentlemen.
your video, please?
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning. Now are we all set?
We're all set to go. You start her off.
Okay, well, thank you. And thank you, first of all, for those of you that have gone out to look at our situation. You know that it's
Can you come
a
up a
fairly,
bit? Excuse me,
sorry?
we're just gonna get a little bit louder. We kind of have I'm having a difficult time hear you.
all right, my volume's up to full. Is that better?
Yeah, we're good to go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I was just thanking you for coming out to look at our situation. You know that it is a fairly unique one. I admit fully that I did make a mistake when I built too close to the lot line. If in all the time that we've had, about a year now, I understand that it comes down to one issue, and it's taken me a few months to come down to that, but it's the saleability of the properties. Is that correct?
I don't know if we're following there. The saleability of there's two pieces of property involved in this, is there?
Yes, there's mine where I have gone over the lot line onto the adjoining property, which of course is owned by my son. And in chatting with you gentlemen, I realize that you are very concerned about future and the lot being sold, and that is going to cause problems for the township. Is that
It's gonna
correct?
cause problems for you as well.
Yeah, that's why we're,
I'd say more than the township.
well, okay. The solution, I think that may work is when the lot beside me, Andrew owns that. At some point, he's going to inherit my property. Now, that's in our will, and you gentlemen are quite free to look at that will and see that's what it states, that he inherits my property. If you folks would agree that in writing, we would put down the fact that at some point in the very near future, Andrew could amalgamate his lot that he presently owns with my lot, which he will inherit. And if those two are amalgamated, then this issue totally disappears. And Andrew could speak to that, but we have spoken privately, and he says he has no problems whatsoever with signing a document that you folks could create, or we would create and have you approve, that in the future, the two properties would be amalgamated. And again, in the future, we've solved all those issues.
But you haven't really solved the issue. Because if you amalgamate that into one property, your son is going to be stuck with a piece of property down the road that until he makes the legalization to your property, he can't do a thing. And because you can't build two houses on one lot.
No, I quite agree. But on his lot at present, is he not allowed to build his cottage?
We probably have no problem with him building a cottage, except that we're trying to legalize yours.
Okay.
But that's because there's two different deeds on the property now. He can build his place, start tonight if he wants. Doesn't really matter to us. But
Okay,
somehow we've got to straighten your problem out.
yes.
And you won't be able to amalgamate it. I don't think that, how do we know what's going to happen 10 years down the road or 15 years down the road? I think it's just, maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but I think that things have to be straightforward and clear, and that doesn't make it clear. Mr. Smith.
Well, Mr. Chair, I wondered if we might get Jeff, our Director of Planning, to provide the rules surrounding that. So if the son, who's, I believe his name is Andrew, if he's got a spot cleared on his lot now from my observation when it's out there. So if he starts building a cottage on his lot, and then he showed up and said, I want to merge these two lots into one. Jeff, what would you do with that request to merge two lots, each that have their own cottage on them, into a single lot? Would that be permitted?
Yes, thank you. And through you, Chair. So if I could just elaborate a little bit more, right now the lot's vacant. So as Mr. Greenhouse suggested, if those two lots were merged right now, it would resolve the compliance issue. But as Councillor Smith suggested, if Andrew Greenhouse was to build on the adjacent lot, build a dwelling, merging them in the future would cause zoning compliance issues because, as you mentioned, you're only permitted to have one dwelling per lot. So merging them would have two dwellings per lot and would create another compliance issue.
Okay, thank you. I understand and I can live with that. Then our last option then is to apply for a severance. And as one of you gentlemen have pointed out, we can just sever off a pie-shaped, pizza-shaped piece of property. And we, both Andrew and I, are in total agreement to that procedure if that rectifies all our problems.
I'd say we're on the right track.
Perfect. A $10,000 problem that I've created for myself.
Maybe get it for $98.75. I don't know.
Who do you know that I don't?
One of our committee members wishes to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to address and make sure that you understand the situation and why you've come to this proper conclusion in my submission of taking some area off your son's lot and have it added to yours. That is the solution that would allow you to keep two separate parcels of land. There is the opportunity to you on the severance to take just enough area off of his property to add on to your property that would still keep his lot in compliance with the zoning requirements and now would give you 15 feet more sideline clearance at the area of the expansion that you've done. It is, in what we've looked at, about the only solution to you. So therefore, you would not be coming in front of this committee for a minor variance. You would then proceed to a county application for a severance. And I would suggest to you that you engage an agent to do it all on your behalf. Don't do it yourself. You'll get into confusion.
Okay. Okay, thank you for that. That's what we will do then.
Okay, Mr. Green, now what we're going to do is we're going to pass a motion to deny each one of these variances that were requested based on what the intent you have to sever a piece of property and make it legal and whatever. Is that correct? That's what we should do, right? Mr. Smith?
Yes, I'd agree. I think that's the right step is, and I'd be happy to move that.
Okay.
I would say one thing to Mr. Greenhow and to any member of the public that might be paying attention. The really, the cause of this problem goes back to putting an addition on a cottage without getting a building permit. Had you made an application for a building permit, the building department would have reviewed the blueprints and the survey of the land and said, you got a problem with this, and we wouldn't be here. And I only raise that not to be critical of Mr. Greenhow specifically, but in nearly 4 years as a counselor here, I've seen dozens and dozens of cases where people go ahead and do something without a building permit, and then later on it catches up with them. And
Welcome to Halliburton Highlands.
and so everyone, when you're doing something, call the planning department, call the building department, get the permits, and you'll avoid bigger problems down the road, like this $9,000 or $10,000, whatever it's going to cost to sever a piece of property here. The root cause is there's no building permit. Simple
I
as
think
that.
that's very sound advice. Jeff, you wish to speak? Mr. Isles?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And just going off your comments that you were looking or discussing denying all the variances to allow Mr. Greenhow to proceed through the severance process. I did want to bring one thing to the committee's attention with regards to the first variance, and that's the one for the side lot line setback for the dwelling. Given that a building permit was issued for the dwelling, the municipality may have some responsibility in recognizing the original dwelling, or at least the setback of the original dwelling prior to the addition. So Mr. Greenhouse asked for a variance of 40 centimeters as opposed to the 4.5 meters. The existing dwelling that was approved by the building permit is actually located 3.66 meters from the side lot line as opposed to the required 4.5 meters. So I wanted to bring that to the committee's attention to see if they were considering approving that existing structure or the original structure prior to the addition.
So if you want to, go ahead.
Jeff, I understand that, but if Mr. Greenhow's plan here is to legalize the addition that he's put on, is that not going to resolve that matter? Because the addition is a bigger problem than the original building.
Yeah.
Right?
True. So if Mr. Greenhow went through the severance process and severed 4.5 meters, it would resolve all issues. Yep.
Yeah.
So 4.5 meters is what he's got to have, right?
Yeah. With the addition. And
With the
then,
addition, yeah.
I don't think Mr. Greenhow has any intention now of tearing down the addition. If
I don't
he
think so.
wanted to do that, if that was a course of action he was thinking of pursuing, then approving, legalizing the original cottage would be something to be appropriately discussed. But I don't think that's even something that's on his mind. You're not contemplating that, are you, Mr. Greenhow?
No, I think I would like to leave it the way it is and sever the property. However, as Mr. Isles has said, the township does bear some responsibility, and perhaps you could see us severing a little bit less than the 4.5 meters. And the reason I say that is if we went with the 4.5 meters, that's approximately 15 feet. And when Andrew goes to build, he's now limited 15 feet on one side, 15 feet on the other side as a setback. So his new dwelling must then fit in within 70 feet. And the building that he's looking at, he would like to put on a single car garage. And that would eliminate him doing that if we had to sever the full 4.5. So would the committee accept something a little bit less than the 4.5?
Well, there's other places. If you want the garage attached to the house and facing the lake, is that what he wants to do? That's what you're telling me, because there's other places on the property you can probably get his garage.
Yeah, that is quite true. And he's looked at that and has agreed to that. But his preference would be, and you can talk to him if you want, would be to have a single car garage attached to the new dwelling, but it's not absolutely essential, he says.
Mr. Bishop.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that you are looking at all possibilities, and what we cannot deal with here at this point in time are concepts of your future use of the property. I think that, Mr. Chair, what we have to do is deny the applications that are in front of us. Let Mr. Greenow apply for his severance as he has talked about as being the most common sense application to deal with, to gain enough area to ensure that his addition will comply. That will make the whole cottage comply at that time. If we approve of his minor variance as to the original cottage, because it's got a lesser setback, then it would be my recommendation that we put a condition on that approval that he tears down the part of the building that he's gone on to construct without permit. So the thing is, you're caught between a rock and a bit of a hard place, there's no doubt about that. But I think what you do is you proceed with the severance. There would be support for the severance from the municipal side. And when that happens, all of these problems disappear. You end up with two viable pieces of property, both of which can comply as to existing and future buildings, as long as you meet the sideline and setbacks. So I don't think we need to complicate it up further
No, I don't.
in that regard.
Are
Okay,
you on side with all this, Mr. Isles? Because we're going to deny all these resolutions, right?
Yes, that's fair. When
Okay.
I was mentioning that previously, I was only referring to the existing dwelling without the addition. So what the discussion that's transpired between both sides seems to have resolved that.
Well, I think just so the townships knows what's going on, at some point in time, when this is all completed, this piece of property is going to end up somewhere where it's now legalized as opposed to non-legal now, right? So will that be information be flowing through you, Jeff?
Yeah, so I think if Mr. Greenhow wants to keep his addition, I think the discussion was appropriate. So if all variances are denied, it will become an enforcement issue, but as long as Mr. Greenhow's taking the steps such as a severance application to resolve those setback and encroachment issues, bylaw enforcement would likely sit back and wait until that was resolved.
Yeah. Okay, sounds good, Mr. Walker.
So I'm not here to complicate more, but I'm kind of, excuse me, thinking from a planning aspect. And as Mr. Bishop had mentioned, if we were to grant the first request on the setback reduction, if we pass that with the condition that he tears down the addition, then the decision is made. So when they move forward, if for some reason they never end up with the boundary adjustment or the severance, the lot still has compliance as long as they tear the addition off.
I don't think he wants to do that.
But I agree, he doesn't want to do that, but in the future for planning, if the next owner were to buy that property and would realize this is legal if I tear that little addition off, from a planning standpoint, it clears up the situation.
Mhm.
That's all I'm saying is that way it can be legalized. If Mr. Greenhow doesn't want to do it, that's fine. The condition is there. But from a planning standpoint, you're legalizing that piece of property. And like I say, the next owner, which may never happen, but that condition's in place. So then nobody has to get a minor variance. They don't have to do anything other than tear the addition off and move on forward. Municipality has the rules in place. The enforcement is ready. And as Jeff had mentioned, he's applied for it. He's already spent the money for the application. So it's, all he has to do is move forward with the severance. As long as he does that, everything goes away. But in the meantime, if it doesn't happen, everything is done and protected and paid for, and the rules are in place.
So that's entirely up to him.
Exactly.
That's up to him.
But from the municipality and the planning issue and the zoning issue, as Mr. Howes has mentioned, it's done.
Yeah.
Totally enforceable.
Thank you. I can perfectly understand where Mr. Walker is thinking, and that it is a very complex situation, but the problem is that if we grant that application in regard to the sideline setback of the original cottage, you are going to be forced to issue a tear down order. I don't know how we say to the township, but hold off on a tear down order and wait and see if he gets a severance. And that's the problem we get here. So I think that what we do is we just let him go with the application for severance that he's said that that's the pursuit that he wants to take. And if it's denied, then he's going to have to make a further application to renew his setback on the original cottage, which would result then in a tear down order. So I don't think that denying everything at this point in time, I think that's the route to take. And then let him do the severance and see what happens.
Okay, again,
We all in agreement?
Just a final comment before we vote on that to Mr. Greenhow.
just
Your concern about the narrowing of your son's lot to potentially 70 feet. I'd encourage you to have a chat with our planning department, because I don't think your assumption seems to be that the severance needs to be a straight line from one end of the lot to the other. That may not be the requirement. You may be able to do something of a more irregular shape that would provide some protection to your son's lot in that respect.
Which
Yeah.
would make sense.
yeah,
All
okay, well, thank you, committee. I appreciate the time that you've spent on this. You vote against me, and that's quite okay. I accept that. And I will also say by the end of this week, I will make all necessary plans to proceed with a severance, and we'll let the planning department, the severance people decide whether we take off this pie-shaped piece or maybe even a rectangular piece. And I will proceed with that, guaranteed.
Thank you very much for your cooperation. So it's moved by John Smith, and I'm looking for a seconder. Gerald Walker. With request to the variance provision in section 5.2 to permit a dwelling to have an interior side lot line setback of 0.4 meters or 1.3 feet, as opposed to permitted 4.5 meters or 14.676 feet, is denied. Variance provision in section 3.7 permit eaves to extend 4.5 meters or 14.76 feet into a minimum setback area, as opposed to permitted 0.75 meters or 2.461 feet, is denied. Variance provision in sections 3.7 permit attached deck to encroach into an interior side lot line setback of 4.3 meters or 14.11 feet, as opposed to permitted 0 meters and 0 feet, is denied. The variance provision in section 5.2 to permit an accessory building to have an interior side lot line setback of 0.64 meters or 2.1 feet, as opposed to the permitted 1 meter, 3.28 feet, is denied. Can we have a vote on that? Motion's carried. Thank you very much, sir, for your understanding and for your cooperation in this operation.
Well, thank you. May I say one final comment?
Absolutely.
Thank you. On the opposite end of the property, we have plans to put in a garage. The planning department has denied that permit, and I've done it legally this time, to get a permit to put in the garage. the planning department has said no to that permit because of this pending problem. I believe now we have taken steps to correct the problem. As I say, I will guarantee that we will get this done through a severance. Your committee does not have any influence over the planning committee. I understand that, but could you put a little bug in their ear that we have solved this issue and that you don't have any problems now with issuing a permit for the building of that garage?
Mr. Greenhour, I have always believed that this committee should be called the Committee of Common Sense.
Good, good, good.
And we'll stick with you on that. But we can't get involved in the plan, but I'm sure they'll be treating you fair, realizing that the problems that you've gone through and solved, and I think the situation will carry on. Jeffrey.
Yes, excuse me. Thank you. Mr. Greenhow, you may wish to contact the building department because I'm not aware of any application for your garage to come through the planning department. So it may be sitting in the building department. So after the meeting today, you might just wish to reach out to them and then they can take steps to get that application moving forward again.
Okay, again, thank you one and all for your understanding and cooperation.
Likewise, I'm sure. Thank you very much. Okay, the next application is for
Councillor John Smith, you may leave the council chamber.
oh, sorry, Lana? Oh, yeah, we have to dismiss. That was, I was looking for a note to dismiss John Smith.
You've got 3 applications in a row, right?
3 in a row, and we'll welcome you back.
Okay.
Good, that- Okay, John. Okay, so the next application is Lands of Nottingham, Benor Lake. Are they speaking today, Ilana?
Hello, everyone.
Good morning.
Turning everything on here. So we had there we are. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
We can hear you. We can see you. Mr. Greenhow or Mr. Nottingham. Have you been to visit this property, Gerald?
No, I never made it.
Okay. Two of the committee members have visited your property, and perhaps you can start the conversation off with what you're proposing, and I'm sure we'll have some questions each way from that.
Okay. Well, we own the lot 74 at 1052 Michael Drive, and we're looking to build a cottage there. And we had the surveyors come in and survey it, and basically we had applied for 2 minor variances. One was to encroach the lot line, which you guys made fairly clear in the last meeting that wasn't an option. And then due to the high water mark along the shore, the building envelope had kind of a dip in it, and we were proposing that for a minor variance to basically square it off, which would allow us to make the building just a bit wider. So I guess where we left it off in the last meeting was there's going to be some committee members visit the site. I thought we were going to have the opportunity to meet you guys there, but unfortunately, I guess that didn't happen. So we're just, I guess, here we are.
Okay. We're sort of caught between a rock and a hard place, because I think because the building's not built yet, you probably have the opportunity to build it in compliance with sort of taking a second look at exactly what you're doing. But some of the committee member or Mr. Bishop certainly will have something to say, because we were spent a couple hours there. The other thing I have to mention to you before I forget is that when you do get this place built, the hot tub has to be in compliance with the 66 feet as well. I notice the hot tub's very close to the lake. So just bear that in mind, because there's gonna be more and more of these hot tubs, and we're gonna get more and more requests to validate something that is not allowed in the setback, so. Okay,
Yeah, no, understand completely. Yeah.
Mr. Bishop, could you comment?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Mr. and Mrs. Nottingham. You know, it's a lovely piece of property. It's nice and flat, and the exposure is wonderful in terms of the view from there. I understand you own the lot next door as well, is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
So I was at a bit of a loss to try and figure out on the ground exactly where the positioning of this building was going to be. And there was some red flagging and whatnot, and I'm not sure exactly what it was supposed to depict. Did you have it laid out on the ground as to where this building was supposed to situate?
Yeah, well, that was the plan, and to be frankly honest with you, I thought we were going to be given the opportunity to meet you guys there and walk through it.
Okay. Well, so you've not, this cottage or this house or whatever it's going to be, you've had it designed by somebody, by someone like an architectural drawing, or what have we got here?
We had a builder come out and look, and he pointed it where he thought the cottage should be facing, just for the light and morning exposure. What is it? Exposure and yeah. So we kind of marked where the builder thought it should face.
Well, the concern that
We
I
haven't
have
gone
here,
yet.
I beg your pardon?
Sorry. We haven't gone
Official
and had official drawings done yet. We're just trying to establish, I guess, how much build envelope we had available before we spent money doing that.
Well, I can understand from your drawing that there is an indentation in the site of the high water mark, and that is shown as to the encroachment that you'd want to do into the water setback on the drawing that we have in front of you.
That's
We have a
correct, yeah.
problem because in regard to all new construction and trying to deal with cottage development on our lakes is to maintain the integrity of the water setback, both as to its use from your side and as to its use from someone seeing it from the lakeside or across the lake from you. And under the provisions of the policy and the zoning bylaw, it says that we are to ensure that this setback from the water is to be strictly enforced. These are words that we can't overcome in regard to a decision. So I am wondering here that in order to accommodate this process and meet the zoning, whether or not you can go back to your builder and come up with a design that would comply. And it's good that we can catch it now before something is built or started to be built, but that would be a thought that I have in my mind, that you could redesign this cottage in order to meet those setbacks.
All right.
Well, I guess, I mean, we can do anything, I guess. I mean, the concern was that with the building on that, it was going to be narrow. And, we're a family of 6, and to get the building suitable kind of for our using, it was going to be very narrow and long. And we're just trying to build something that kind of looks decent, and just that extra width would make all the difference. But I guess if that's the decision, then that's what we'll have to do.
Just before Mr. Walker, how much deck is he allowed on the front, Jeff?
Thank you, Chair. As per the zoning bylaw, a deck can encroach 3 meters into a minimum setback, except for the interior side lot line setback where it's not permitted to encroach.
Well, I'm looking at this drawing here right now, but the front deck and the cottage on this lot, on this diagram here, this, he owns this property. You own lot 75 as well, sir?
Yes. Mhm.
He owns both those pieces of property. So if it helps him to get closer to the required setback from the lake, if he's allowed the deck on the back, and then when he measures from the front, he measures from the cottage, not the deck, right? How much deck is he allowed on the front? Is my question too.
So the front lot line's the water or the shoreline in this instance. So a deck can encroach 3 meters into that water setback. Where the deck is proposed on the opposite side of the building, abutting their adjacent property, it's not permitted to encroach into the setback. So the required setback there is 4.5 meters. And as per the bylaw, decks can't encroach into the side lot line setbacks. And this is for privacy reasons, just so people don't have decks overlooking their neighbor's property.
If he owns it.
That's true. So it's probably not an issue
Just
right
wondering
now.
if, but
In the planning department,
does-
we always like to say we're planning for
The
100
variance
years
on
in
the back
future.
help the variance on the front is really my question again.
Pardon me?
If we allow the variance on the back deck or whatever, or maybe that's the front deck, I don't know what it is, but the one I'm looking at, the deck that's right beside is the lot 75. So when he does his measurement for his cottage, he goes from the cottage, not the front deck, right?
Correct.
Correct. So maybe this map is confusing me, but it would seem to me he would have 66 feet allowed easy enough from the house, wouldn't he?
Oh, I'm just trying to look at this right now. So just bear with me
Maybe.
for one moment.
Pardon me?
Just bear with me for one moment. I'm just taking a closer look at the site plans. So based on the site plan, which is property sketch A, the applicants have provided a development envelope, basically as per the bylaw, which is outlined in green. And they're showing a red hatched area, which is the portion of the dwelling that's going to be located within that 20-meter setback.
Yeah.
On the backside, it's the same thing. So they're showing the developable envelope, and currently the dwelling as proposed complies with that setback to the adjacent property they own. However, the deck's not permitted to encroach beyond that development envelope as per the zoning bylaw. So they'd like that deck to go a little bit closer to their side lot line, which is the reason for that variance. I hope I'm explaining myself or at least answering
I'm
your
not sure if I
question.
got that. Go ahead, John.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Understand that. I don't have a problem with the squaring of the line that entails the indentation of the lot line, the front lakeshore lot line. So the indentation there looks to be a couple of meters. And it does provide a little bit of a hardship for anyone trying to square up a building on an indent. So I would be willing or agreeable to allow a minor variance on the water side within the setback to basically square that line up. But I do have an issue with the rear deck against the lot line. And the owner here, by owning both properties, you may have an opportunity there to do a boundary adjustment or a severance to maybe widen that property out to give you a little more room within those setbacks. And I don't know how that may affect the neighboring property, but it's another complication, but it may be an opportunity to allow you to do a little more of your building there. Obviously there's an expense there, but just in a previous file, we talked about boundary adjustment between the ownership, which he owns both, so. That's kind of my view. If there's no opportunity for a boundary adjustment there, I would be willing to be agreeable to square that line up on that little indentation of the water setback.
Anything else here?
I can appreciate what Mr. Walker is referencing in the fact that there are the vagaries of undulating shorelines. And that at some point in your parcel of land, you have an opportunity to meet the water setback. But then because of undulating shorelines, there are other areas where you will have difficulty in meeting that setback. The problem is I can't change shorelines. That's what exists. And I also can have to deal with, can I change zoning bylaws in order to accommodate a building that might encroach into certain setbacks? We have the opportunity to deal with variances that encroach into rear yard setbacks, sideline setbacks, and street setbacks. And in cases where there is no water involved, we can encroach, if the minor variance passes all the tests, into front line setbacks. But we still have to overcome, in this particular application or any application like it, that we have wording of the policy and the zoning bylaw that the water setback is to be strictly enforced. If Mr. Isles can tell me how I can get by that, I'd be happy to listen to it. But I don't know at this point in time how I do get around that, Mr. Chair.
I'll be based on the discussion today. We let Mr. Sir
Nottingham.
Mr. Nottingham go back to his drawing board and see what just defer this application to the next meeting based on him coming back to us with maybe some alternative possibility. Would that be fair?
Okay.
What do you guys think?
The applicant is agreeable. Sorry.
So that means you don't have to pay us again or anything else. You go with the person that you're working with on the design and see what you can come up with. And based on the conversation we've had, I think you know where we're coming from. Let's find out if we can put something together that will work for both of us. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, okay.
And so this will appear again, this application will appear again at the next meeting. And if you can just do some doctoring up and switching, perhaps we can work the whole thing out. But you don't have to pay again. You don't have to do anything like that. It's just the chance for, based on the conversations you've heard, where we're coming from, and we think we know where you're going to. And so if you can take that and see where you can work out with this, with the water setback, we'll consider it at the next meeting. Would that be possible?
Okay, yeah, I guess if that's,
There's no more room.
Is that fair enough?
It can changes.
I think that is a suggestion that is viable, Mr. Chair. But the big thing I want the applicants to understand is we have to overcome, we cannot overcome the word strictly enforced to. So have a look at that with your designer of your building. And the other side of it is, as Mr. Walker has pointed out, there are concerns about that sideline setback. And it's nice that you own the other parcel of land, but we have to treat it that somebody else owns that parcel of land. They all have to stand on their own 2 feet. And that we're not creating something in regard to a neighboring piece of property that in the future could cause conflicts, both as to the use of property and attitudes of people.
So can you live with that, Mr. Cunningham?
Yeah, well, we'll just.
Relook
see
your
what we can do.
program and we'll talk to you at the next meeting. And see if we've been able to work something out. It would work for both of us.
Yeah, okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll defer both the both of the variances. The decreased provision in section 5.2 to permit a dwelling to have a minimum water setback of 17.9 meters or 58.7 feet as opposed to required 20 meters or 65.6 feet is deferred. And decrease provision is 3.7 permit attached deck to extend into the minimum interior side lot line setback of 2.1 meters or 6.9 feet as opposed to required 0 meters and 0 feet is also deferred. Someone would like to move this? Let me get my stuff here. David Bishop. Gerald Walker. So it's been moved and seconded that the application as presented is deferred to the meeting in, I guess it'll be August. All in favor? We're there. So are they still there? They're gone? So it's up to them to come back to you, Jeff. Maybe you can just give that guy a call and just say, you know, I think they understand what we're looking at, right?
Yes, we'll follow up with the applicants and provide them with the decision. And we will work with them just so that they can submit a new design and we can bring that forward for the committee's consideration.
So I just to make a comment to Jeff when he's talking to these people, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Jeff, this is a very, very flat piece of property. And it's got lovely, lovely pines on it. But if we have to treat 75 and 74 as two separate ownerships, okay, they look on each other. You can't be on lot 75 without seeing what's going on 74, and you can't be on 74 without seeing what's going on 75. So activity in both places will have a factor of affecting their uses.
Okay, thank you.
Great piece of property.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
Yeah. Oh, let's see what he comes up with. And we'll carry on from there.
Okay.
Okay, next we've got to deal with the land of Glen Evans. And he, at the request of the applicant, he actually wants this deferred. So, where the hell is this thing? I don't know. I'm gonna move that we move and second that we defer. Move by Gerald. Second by Dave.
I'll second the motion, Mr. Chair. I have no objections to a deferral. There are some comments that might be worthwhile. I don't know whether to make them at this point in time or make them at the time of the actual sit down for the application to be brought forward. The other item I have is that I have spent a fair bit of time in regard to this application, both in research and attending. And if there is going to be a deferral, I would like to be attending at that meeting, but I would like therefore that meeting to be brought forward in October. because I want to have some freedom in the month of August and September to travel with my spouse, who is now retired by me at 81 years old.
You listening, Jeff?
Sorry, I was muted. I am listening. Committee Member Bishop, though, if you could please speak up, that would be helpful.
Well, beg your pardon here. No, I didn't have it on. That's what my problem was.
Thank you.
I said, Mr. Isles, I said that I am not have any objection to a deferral of this application. However, I have spent a fair bit of time in looking at it and doing some research on it and attending at the site. I'm open to gathering more information. And since I've spent that time, I would like to be present at the meeting in which it comes forward. I do, however, want to take some time with my spouse this summer, and therefore I would request that it be deferred to an October meeting.
Jerry?
As I can, I would like to, with that request, I have no problem with the request, but I think there should be some correspondence with the applicant. I know they're trying to get this thing moving forward. So that's my only comment. No disrespect, but we do have an applicant here, and that might be part of the decision on a deferral and date.
I don't know if we can,
So it's up to-
how do you want to handle this, Jeff?
Well, thank you for the comments. I think the request from the applicant today anyways is to defer the application today without discussion. So we can go ahead and do that. In terms of when this application is brought back, I think the most important thing is to make sure that we have quorum and that we're following legislation. And as Committee Member Walker mentioned, I think the applicant should have a bit of input on this as well. So it's something we'll go back and look at, and we can be in discussion with the committee on this, but I'll talk to the applicant after the meeting today, and I'll keep the committee in the loop. But I think the most important thing is that we have proper quorum and that we're following legislation.
Okay.
In regard to quorum, Mr. Chair, if I don't come on August or September, then since I was part of the original hearing and did go out, and Mr. McKechnie was on our committee, but he's no longer in committee, I think we'd have a quorum problem if I didn't show up at either the August or September meeting. Would that be fair, Jeff?
It appears to be. So the quorum would be 3. It's something that I would go and look at the fine wording of the legislation before we bring this back. But my understanding of the legislation is it's now up to the 3 of you to make that decision. And so if one of you can't be present, then it would have to wait until all 3 of you are present.
Okay, Jerry?
Mr. Alves, could you just please check? I think Mr. McKechnie was part of the application originally, and he's a counselor. And normally what happens is when one of the members are not able to attend, you normally would appoint a counselor to fill in. So that might be an opportunity as well. And fellow member, Mr. Bishop, could make comments in writing for that actual meeting. So that's another option in my mind, but it's up to the director of planning to come up with the right rules.
Okay,
Okay?
fair enough.
And that's what I'll go look at. Sorry, through you, Chair. I'll go look at that. What the legislation does say, though, is that you have to be present for all meetings to discuss the application. If you miss meetings, then you were not privy to certain discussions, so you may not be able to make that decision. But this is something I'll go back and look at. I will contact the applicant. We'll have this discussion. and mention to him what committee member Bishop said about impending vacation, and go from there.
The only other comment I have in that regard is that one of the correspondences that I had was that the applicant wanted Mr. McKechnie there as his representative for Ward 3. Now we get into a question of, is Mr. McKechnie going to be there as his advocate? And if he's there as his advocate and a representative of Ward 3 and looking after a constituent, he can't be a member of the committee.
I understand that, yeah. Well, that's not him sorted out.
Okay.
Fair enough.
we have a director of
There we go. So be it it's moved and seconded that the committee's decision with respect to file D13 MB 2020-007 be recorded as follows. The variances are deferred. Carried. Okay. What we got next? It's more complicated. So next we've got the lands of Mr. Bellon. So John, can John come back now, Jeff?
Yes, no, not yet. No.
Oh, yeah.
One more application and then Mr.
One more.
Councillor Smith can rejoin us.
Are you there, Mr. Bellon?
Yes.
We don't see you.
How's that?
Oh, there you are. You're hiding back in the corner.
Yeah.
I think we've been there, haven't we?
Have you? Oh,
I'm not positive about that.
No. No.
So you're looking for a permit that have a minimum street setback of 32 feet as required, 57.4 feet.
right.
Giles, has there been any communication with any of the road departments or anything?
Thank you, Chair, through you. And before I comment on that, I just want to mention a couple things. So this application was before the committee at last month's council meeting. Original notice was provided on May 24th and also put in the newspaper. If the committee recalls, there was an internal clerical error on that notice.
Right.
And therefore it was recirculated. However, again, there was a clerical error in the notice circulated, but that has been corrected and it doesn't need to be deferred today. So the documents in front of you all today do reflect the correct section of the zoning bylaw and the correct value that the applicant is seeking for that setback. We did contact the Public Works Department. They have no concerns with the location of the new garage. They do indicate that their records show that they are approved for one entrance only. So if the applicant still would like to proceed with the second entrance, they must obtain an entrance permit or alternatively remove one of the driveways. So based on the Public Works comments, we have added a condition to a recommended condition to the application that the applicants are to apply for an entrance permit or remove one of the driveways.
Okay, Mr. Bellon?
Yes. First off, I'd like to mention that this all came about due to an error in the GIS mapping of our property. And when I went to apply for the original building permit, it was based on that GIS map. So all the dimensions and measurements that were included in my original site plan were based on that. When it comes down to the lot line, and we actually have the surveyors here today reconfirming the lot line at the road. I'd like to go back to bylaw 5.2 with the side lot or the back lot line at 7.5 meters, which is 24.6, which is basically the same distance from the center of the road that I originally put in my original lot line or site plan, sorry, from 32 from the center portion of the road.
Right.
So I want to forego, in bylaw 3.3, it states that I need 7.5 from the road plus an extra 10 meters. I want to forego the 10 meters required for that road setback and go with the property line, or sorry, the edge of the road is 7.5 meters, 24.6 feet setback for the garage.
Okay,
And with the garage going in that area, it will block off that second entrance into the property.
any questions on any of that?
So, Mr. Chair, do I understand that this concept of a permit for a second entrance will be gone because of the location of the garage, is that correct?
I'm not sure, I think so.
Yes, it would be.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
And
Jerry?
So maybe we could have Mr. Ells read out the conditions. I'm just looking at them and I've looked at them before. We're talking about I think there was a shelter and a pump house. Things that Shelter Logic are to be removed. So just some clarification on the conditions. If we could.
So, Mr. Bell?
Yes, so on the conditions, I've removed the one shed and I've joined the other two wood sheds that were there. They've been joined. It's actually, I've had to cut half of the wood shed to accommodate my generator. Since I have no more storage for anything that I have on the property, I was hoping that the Shelter Logic could be left up for storage until the garage is up. That way I can keep my equipment, snow blower and everything secure and dry. And also I've sent pictures also and been in contact with Jeff regarding the pump house at the lake. It's a 4x6 pump house that basically houses my pump, pressure tank and filter for lake draw. And because of the slope of the land, pump house is located 32 feet from the shore high water mark to help the draw of the pump, since the bay that we are situated in is very shallow. And if I went any farther away from the lake, I wouldn't be able to draw up from it. And I'm hoping that I could keep the pump house where it is. And since they had basically my only water source.
Been there. How long has the pump house been
About
there?
40 years.
I'm sure we can work something out. Can you cover that, Jeff, in your stuff there? In your conditions?
Sorry, Chair, could you repeat that?
Did you hear what Mr. Ballon was saying?
Yes, I did hear Mr. Ballon, but I did not hear what you said.
He just basically wants to keep the pump house where he is, because if he moves it, it's 32 feet from the high water mark, it's only 4x6. And if he moves it, then he can't get the draw he needs. So can you give us a list of the conditions that will actually apply?
I will read out the conditions, yes. And I am going to skip the first three conditions. They're standard from application to application. The fourth condition notes that prior to the pouring of the footings, that the applicant must submit confirmation from an Ontario land surveyor that the garage meets the granted street setback. Excuse me. The fifth condition says prior to the pouring of the footings, the pump house located within the water setback is to be removed or brought into compliance with the zoning bylaw. Number 6 says prior to the pouring of the footings, the Shelter Logic and shed are to be removed or brought into compliance. And lastly, prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall apply for an entrance permit to Public Works Department or remove the second entrance. So based on the discussion, condition number 7, it can still stay there, but Mr. Balance noted that the proposed garage will be located where that second entrance is, so that they will be removing that second entrance. In terms of, excuse me, the sixth condition, which is the removal of the shelter, logic, and shed. Typically, staff, we would like that removed with something to tie it to. So the way it's worded is prior to the pouring of the footings of the garage, it just gives us a little bit of leverage. If the condition's worded that it doesn't have to be removed until after the garage is built, then the leverage is out of the municipality, and it becomes a bit of an administrative burden on the municipality, because we now have to take enforcement action to make sure that's removed. And the municipality actually has to expend tax dollars to do so. So we like to word it with that leverage, but it is up to council, the committee's discretion, how they want to deal with that temporary shed. Excuse me. With regards to the pump house, as per the definition of the bylaw, it isn't a pump house, it is a shed. And we've had this discussion with Mr. Ballin. Historically, internally, we've overlooked pump houses that are smaller in stature, the size only to require a pump and the pumping equipment. Anything that's built to the size that can allow additional storage and stuff is considered a shed and is required to meet the minimum water setback. So if that was cut down to size, it's something that we would overlook. But in my opinion, if it was to stay that size, it could be used as a shed and would require variance to the water setback.
Mr. Ballin?
Oh, yes, and I've had this discussion with Jeff. There is actually no defined definition of size for a pump house. So I asked Jeff, I says, how much smaller do I have to make it? Since right now it's comfortable enough that I can work on the pump in the spring and in the fall, and I don't have to take the pump up and down the hill in the winter time. I can leave it in there along with added pipe and my tools for everything and hoses and everything that's in there. That's basically what it's holding right now. But there is no defined definition of size for a pump house, so don't really know how much smaller or what else I can do.
Jeff?
Yes, thank you. Well, you're correct. We don't have a definition of pump house in our zoning bylaw. Under the strict interpretation of the bylaw, it's considered a structure and has to comply with the water setback. All structures do. Internally, we've kind of interpreted and given a bit of leniency towards pump houses. And that most of the ones we saw were about knee high or waist high, just to allow the size of the pump and that material. So I think if the committee recalls, we did see one last month. There was a pump house on the shoreline, but it was roughly waist high. So internally, we've kind of overlooked that. By the strict interpretation, though, of the bylaw, all structures must comply with the zoning bylaws. So you're right. There's no size provisions in the zoning bylaw for that.
Mr. Bishop?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make sure that I understand what's going on here as far as the conditions if we approve this in 84. It is my understanding that Mr. Ballon is requesting that these other sheds, the 8x8 shed and the 6x8 shelter logic shed, he would like them to stay there until after he has completed the building of the garage so that he can move that material that's in there to the garage. Is that correct, Mr. Ballon?
No, only the shelter logic. The 8x8 shed has already been dismantled. It's gone.
Fair.
And everything in it is now tarped and on either in a storage unit or down on the deck and just covered with tarps and waiting.
So your request is that the other building just remain there until you're finished the garage. Is that
The
correct?
shelter yes, the shelter logic.
And then it would be removed?
Yes,
Okay. So now then the other issue is in regard to this pump house.
yes.
So you said to us that you had it at a distance of 32 feet, but on this map it says 20 feet. What is it,
Yeah.
32 or 20?
It's 32. I measured it in the summertime. In the wintertime is when I did the original measurements. trudging through some snow back in February.
So while I appreciate that you are saying that it's a pump house and there's no definition of size, it's still a structure. So what I'm suggesting to you that you do come to some idea of how you can compromise this situation, because otherwise we have to deal with it in the words of strictly enforced water setback.
Mhm.
So what can you come up with, Mr. Bell?
I'll have to come into compliance. In the meantime, if I have to take the house down, I'll take it down. But I said, I'm using the water. It's my only source, especially if the hydro goes out. So, and I can't move it any farther up the hill. It's quite a hill to come up. I don't know if you've been out here to have a look at the property, but that's basically where the pump has to stay. So if I have to bring it into compliance, I will. If I make it smaller or just remove it altogether.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, I think it's difficult for us to be getting into sizing and everything as especially for the pump house. It sounds like there's some lenience and some negotiation with the planning department on that, which sounds to me like can be solved in your favor. And as Mr. Bishop mentioned, it is a structure. It is sightly to people in a boat or neighbors, whatever. So I think you've agreed to make that work, and I think our planning department's going to work with you on that. The shelter logic, I don't know. There again, I don't think it's up to this committee. I would hope our planning department or building department have a bit of leniency on that. And I just don't think it's fair for this committee to have to rule on that. So, and I do know usually when a person takes out a building permit, now that would be on a main dwelling, that they are allowed some sort of storage or container or something on the lot for a certain length of time. So there might be some lenience there for them as well.
We should be allowed water anyway.
Yes.
I'll say, basically, you should work that out between Jeff and whatever. So, but the shelter logic, you don't need that after you get your grad. Is that not correct?
That's true.
Yeah. So you're looking at a 4x6 pump house. Well,
They can deal with that. He's already agreed that he would bring it in compliance.
we're gonna work that situation out with Jeff.
Yes, I will.
Is that fair enough, Jeff?
Yes, thank you. And just for Mr. Ballon's information, as committee member Walker mentioned, it's section 3.4 of the zoning bylaw does allow a tool shed or a construction trailer or other structure incidental to construction to be there for not more than 12 months. So you might have some leniency there to have some sort of temporary structure.
Yep.
Fair enough. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so back to the variance requested. It's a decrease of, we resolve the committee's decision with respect to D13 MV 2022-008 be recorded as follows. The decrease provision is section 3.30 to permit a garage of a minimum street setback of 9.7 meters or 32 feet, as opposed to the required 17.5 meters or 57.4 feet. Granted. Gary?
So, just
Subject to the meeting of the conditions, correct, Mr. Chair? as
Subject to the
discussed?
meeting of the conditions, yeah.
all right.
So just get them on a good day and you can work it all out with them there. The big building's going anyway, right? The lodge, shelter logic, so.
Yes.
So you're good to go. All you have to do is sort that other. Everybody should be allowed water in Halliburton, but there is no town water here, so I don't know where you get it if you didn't have a pump out. So.
Thank you.
Okay. So we're good to go. There is an appeal period on this, but it's 20 days, so don't worry about it. What's she say she's gonna do?
You've got to go get John, bring it back to another.
Oh, yeah, he's allowed back in
Yeah, he's
here.
out there, you gotta get him with a string, you gotta tie a string to his belt. Otherwise
Holy
he'll be
jeez.
gone somewhere.
Who moved that?
Jerry did, I seconded.
I guess this is one or two.
He's back.
I solved all the problems.
So with John back now, Jerry, you're. Right.
Welcome back there, Mr. John Smith.
Thank you.
John Smith was the reverend here for many years. That can't be the same guy, is
No.
it? Okay, so where we're going now is the application of Jones and Bennett Jones on Township of Guilford. Chris Jones. You there, Chris?
Yes, good morning. Hello, my name is Chris Jones.
You're in Toronto.
We
I
are.
feel sorry for you already.
I do too, actually. Yeah, we would rather be where you are. Much greener. We were just there yesterday. Thank you for good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak regarding our request for minor variance. Our goal with my wife and myself is to build a garage on our cottage property. The land that the cottage is on is pretty highly sloped. There's not a lot of flat space, and what little there is close to the road. The place where we park our cars right now, we have a 2-car parking space. It turns out, now that we've done the measurements and looked into this, it's 2 meters from the front lot line, so that's about a 12-meter street setback. That's the only flat space where we park our cars, and so that's where we'd like to build a garage. We did look at the option of blasting the hill further from the road. We had Total Site Services come in and they gave us an estimate. They said it'd be about $90,000 to $100,000, which is probably more than it would cost to build a garage. And it's a lot of rock to blast and haul away. It's basically a rock hill. So we thought it would be better to talk to you folks and see if you'd agree to a minor variance so that we could build our garage basically where the current parking space is, about 2 meters from the front lot line. The garage, or where we would put the garage, where the parking space is, it's up above the level of the road. It's about 15 feet, I guess, above the level of the road because it's up the slope a bit from the road. There's pretty good foliage and tree coverage between where we want to put the garage and where the road is. There is an area that isn't as well treed, and we've been planting trees there. We've planted cedars and birch and oak and some dogwood. So we think it's a good site for a garage. We like a garage. We have other equipment, a wood chipper, lawnmower. I hope to get a snowblower soon. I'm getting a little old to be pushing snow around. And we like to spend time up there, and we want to spend more. So we want to put a garage in. So that's what this is about. It's to see if we can get approval to put a garage in where our parking space is.
Okay. Do you have any questions for this gentleman? Is there, we need to get the, oh, go ahead now.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and through you to Chris. Chris, I drove by the property over the weekend after seeing this file and the application. And I certainly see what you refer to when you talk about a slope back and behind you. I just having driven by and not getting out and doing a formal site visit, but I was curious as to approximately how wide that cleared area is where, we see a photograph of the, I'll call the gravel driveway and shelter you've got there. Approximately how wide that is?
It's wide enough for 2 cars. When I measured it, it would be wide enough for a 2-car garage, let's say a 24 by 24 foot garage. I don't remember exactly how wide it was, but it would fit a 24 foot wide garage.
Okay, I just, you know, the further you can get back from the front lot line and the street, you know, the more favorably, at least I, as one member of the committee, would look at an application like this, and so kind of curious about that. I mean, 574 square feet is not an unreasonably large garage, but some of the applications we see here. So your you know, your objective is modest in that regard, and so you know, it's, to me, it's not an outrageous request, but I'd like to have confidence that we're getting it placed as far back from the front lot as possible.
If I may, oh, sorry.
Are there any comments from any of the maintenance departments, Jeff, with respect to that?
Thank you, Chair. Through you, we do not have any comments from the neighbors, but we did receive comments from the Public Works Department. They've noted that there's 2 entrances on the property, so they require the applicant to apply for an entrance permit for both existing driveways, but otherwise they have no objection to the application. And based on those comments, a recommended condition has been added to address those comments.
Okay. Great.
So I agree with Mr. Smith there. The only thing I could add is, you know, that part of the condition is that I believe would be to try and beef up that vegetation strip towards the road, as it is visible from the lake. The other advantage you do have is you don't have any neighbor beside you, so there's no infringement there. So that would be the only thing my only comment is vegetation, to be sure that try and beef that up so you can't see it from the lake.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Further to Mr. Smith there, we're asking about the size of that pad. I see on the drawing here that it's saying is 7.3 meters by 7.3 meters. That might help you out, Mr. Smith. Is that fair?
It wasn't clear to me whether that was the full size of the clearing or actually the size of the proposed garage. I think that's I took the 7.3 meters as being the garage size when I convert 7.3 by.
I think that's basically correct.
Yeah.
It's gonna fill that spot. With
Yeah.
the garage.
Yeah,
Is that
well,
fair?
that I don't know.
Right.
All right, that's why I was asking him. All right, because the garage is 7.3 by 7.3. That's how you get to the 576 square feet.
So the only question I would have, Mr. Chair, of this applicant is, again, as Mr. Smith has referenced, we're looking at this photograph of the pad and the shelter that's on the end of the pad. I would request that he confirm that after that ledge there that I see on the left-hand side of the photograph, that goes up too steep for you to go back any further. Is that fair to the applicant?
Yes, so if you're looking at the picture where you can see the shelter logic on the right-hand side, that's the slope down to the road. You
Yes.
wouldn't want to go any closer to the road than the 2 meters. I think you'd be getting into an unstable slope. In response to what Mr. Smith had said, I would also like to have the garage further away from the road. And the space where we park our cars now, it is bigger than 24 feet wide. And I guess I look at it as I would like to under-promise and over-deliver. You know, I don't know how much rock they can take away on the north side of the pad. I suspect that the rock that they can take away, the easier part is the first like 10 feet or so. That's probably where the rock is more fractured and they can just use an excavator to drag it away and there won't be any blasting involved, but I don't know. That's usually how rock is. So I'm hopeful that we can actually cut away without too much difficulty 10 to 15 feet on the upslope side of that parking space and move the garage over that way a bit. Because if I was going to have any extra space on one side of the garage or the other, I'd rather have it on the roadside because I'm trying to plant trees there and I'd like to plant more. And I suppose your thinking is that from a visual perspective, you don't want people on the lake or the road to see our garage. And I guess I'm thinking of it from the opposite side, that I don't really want people to see my garage either. But looking at it, so it's kind of the same thing. So
Close the door.
I'm trying to plant trees too. So I think we're both working towards the same end result. But yes, we will definitely look into trying to carve out some of the hill so we can move it further from the 2 meters setback. But I don't know. I can't guarantee it. And this is the start of that process, I guess.
So question to Jeff Isles, Mr. Chair. If we granted the application on the basis of the setback measurements that are applied for at this time, if the applicant was able to dig into that embankment a little bit more and move the garage back farther in his construction, then I presume if we grant this, it's a grant that it could be closer, but in fact, it would end up being farther away. Does that anyway compromise the decision today?
Well, I think the committee needs to look at the variance being granted today. So if that's what's granted, the applicant will be permitted to build to that setback. Based on Mr. Jones's testimony today, he will move it back as far as he can, and he does want it to be screened. But what is granted by the committee is where the applicant will be permitted to build. I hope that answers your question. If not, I'm happy to clarify.
So we could grant it, but if he builds it further back, that's no problem.
Correct. That's the minimum setback.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith?
I think on the same wavelength there. The only issue I have though, or the concern I have, I guess, is that if we grant it at 2 meters and Chris is fortunate enough to be able to build a garage that's, say 15 feet back or 10 feet back further, because that's what he wants to do. Once we've put the 2 meter restriction in place, a future owner, because the problem with our decisions is they last forever on the deeded property. A future owner could turn a 2-car garage into a 3-car garage going out towards the lake because of our willingness to, or the permission we've granted to be 2 meters back. And that's, as I said, that's a bit of a concern. I wondered if there was a way for the committee here to express support to Chris and his objective, and for him to have confidence. Hey, the committee is going to eventually approve this. Maybe it's going to be able to be at 3 or 4 meters back as opposed to 2, based on him getting the contractor in to actually start, clearing the space for the foundation as far back from the lake as possible. And then he can come back and say, oh, good news is they've been able to go 12 feet. And now instead of 2 meters, 4 meters is good for a setback. 3.5 meters, I don't know. Because I think we can have confidence in Chris here and his objective. But again, our decision lasts forever. Somebody 100 years from now could say, oh, I'm going to put a bigger garage up, 2 meters back as opposed to what is really required. And nobody wants to have to spend $90,000 on blasting, or frankly, the committee doesn't want that degree of destruction, with a forest area going on for no good purpose anyway. Would that sort of approach work where we express support, deferred this? You wouldn't need to make another application, but we expressed that support. Chris went away, got his contractor in and, cleared the area, and then came back and said, hey, 3.5 meters is going to work. Good news.
I'm okay with that. Are you okay with that?
If the applicant is willing to defer his application and be allowed to do it, it would be a good thing to see. I don't know when the contractor is going to come in. If he can get back farther a little bit.
Excuse me, committee member Bishop, could you turn on your microphone?
Oh, I beg your pardon. Thank you. If the applicant is willing to have it deferred, knowing that we are still positive even at the request, and he's got a contractor lined up to see whether or not he can dig into that bank a little bit farther. And that if he can, for his garage size, then amend his setback. I'm agreeable to that, but I think that that's something we have to discuss with Mr. Isles and the applicant.
I guess my only concern, I agree with the idea of, yes, there's a probable here, but you're also holding our applicant up from moving forward with an application to get a building permit, which we're into July, and you know, that might put this project off for a year. So maybe could we look at a compromise of maybe saying 3 meters instead of 2, which you could live with, and maybe we could live with, and you can proceed, and hopefully you can get that other meter into the hill, and then everyone, we're not dealing again, and you can move forward with your project. That's a bit of a compromise, and the file's closed.
Mr. Jones.
I would be more inclined to go with Mr. Walker's suggestion. I am concerned about the timelines involved with getting work done. We just spent 1.5 years trying to find somebody to pour a concrete slab in our cottage. And when I did ask people to come in and give a quote on removing the rock, out of the 6 people, only 2 of them came, and only 1 of them actually gave us a quote. That was Total Site Services, and they said they couldn't do it till next year. So I'm concerned about the timelines involved. If we want to get somebody in to do some work, and then we have to come back to do this, I'm concerned it could be 1 year or more, and I'm concerned about that delay. So if I had to make a choice between delaying and coming back again, or going with a 3-meter setback, I feel confident we can get another meter out of that hill. So I would rather go with that latter option if I had to choose. If you would be agreeable to the 3 meters, then I think that would be the better of the 2 options.
That's item C, is it? Joe?
So I'll make a motion on item C, is it?
Yeah.
That we change it from 3 meter, or what was it?
2 meters.
2 meters to 3 meters.
How many feet's that?
That's about 9.5 feet.
3 meters, almost 10 feet.
10
Almost
feet.
empty.
10 feet.
Almost 10, how about 9.7?
We'll make it 10. It's easier to measure.
10 feet, 10 feet. So what about these other things, this woodshed and all this business?
Conditions apply.
Okay. So read us off the list of conditions that will be applicable, Jeff, that we're going to allow, okay?
Sure, thank you, Chair. Through you, I am going to skip the first 3 conditions as they are pretty standard from application to application. Condition number 4, prior to the pouring of the footings, the applicant must submit confirmation from an Ontario land surveyor that the garage, woodshed, and dwelling meet the granted setbacks. Condition number 5, prior to the issuance of a building permit, this temporary storage structure is to be removed, which I think is inevitable because that's where it's going to go. Condition number 6, prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall apply to the Public Works Department for an entrance permit for both the existing driveways. Yes, and that's it.
Yes.
There was one additional condition suggested, that additional vegetation be applied between the garage and the roadway to further block the garage view from the lake. So would we add that as a condition?
Through you, Chair, we do have a condition. It's one of our standard conditions that talks about
Is it in the standard?
recommendations, encouraging additional shoreline planting. But I'm seeking direction from the committee if they'd like to alter that and beef that up a little bit to include some, I guess, stricter wording.
Is the condition number 2 sufficient to cover that at this point in time, Mr. Isles?
It could probably use a bit of a wording update because that condition does talk about additional native shoreline planting where this isn't really a water, it's across the road, it's a back lot, but it's not your standard waterfront lot. So we could change the wording on that, just further additional
We don't want
native
anybody
planting
looking
is
at the garage
encouraged to
anyway,
screen the
Robert said
buildings.
It's only one way you can fix.
That's
We're good to go here or what?
Yeah, fair.
So it's moved by Gerald Walker and seconded by John Smith. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Variance to section 5.2 to permit a dwelling to have a minimum front line setback of 5 meters or 16.4 feet, as opposed to required minimum of 7.5 meters or 24.61 feet. Granted. Variance to section 3.30 to permit a dwelling to have a minimum of street setback of 15 meters or 49 feet, as opposed to required minimum of 17.5 or 57.4 feet. Granted. Variance to section 5.2 to permit a garage to have a minimum front lot line setback of 3 meters. So I've marked that in there, Jeff, instead of 2, and I've initialed it, as opposed to required minimum of 7.5 meters. Granted. Okay. And variance to section 3.30 to permit a garage to have a minimum street setback of 12 meters or 39 feet, as opposed to required minimum of 17.5 meters or 57.4 feet. Okay, granted. The variance to section 5.2 to permit a woodshed to have a minimum front lot line setback of 4 meters or 13 feet, as opposed to required minimum of 7.5 meters or 24.61 feet. Granted. Everybody's in a good humor. The variance to section 3.30 to grant a woodshed to have a minimum street setback of 12 meters or 39 feet, as opposed to require minimum of 17.5 meters or 57.4 feet. Granted. And we're not mentioning the fact that you want to keep your garage door shut, but if you can put some shrubbery there and do that, then you seem like to be an honest guy. It looks like you must have done something right, because that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 variances you got here. You would set a record for today.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your
Very much appreciate it.
cooperation.
Have a good day.
Okay. Who we got next year? Next we got Beavis. Are they hooked? Steve Beavis, is he there?
Should be there now.
Hey there, Steve.
Yes, sir.
We're getting hungry.
You and me both. I can see you guys. Can you see me?
Please turn on your video and your microphone.
Hello.
All right, are we good now?
Well, we do everything but see it. We can hear you.
Great. I don't know. It's not giving me an option.
To see you.
There's an
Sure, you're a
icon
fine-looking young man anyway.
at the bottom of your screen that should say video, and click that. We can see you now, or we can see something,
That's the.
but we cannot hear you.
That's the
Turn-
previous guy's Shoreline.
You may be able
Very
to
good.
turn
Planet.
Turn your camera around.
your camera around.
Well, if I just go to this camera and turn the view around, then I'd be able to see you guys as well.
One, two.
There we go. Now just start your audio, please. And we'll be good to go. Excellent. Thank you.
All right,
There you
I think
are.
we finally got it.
Welcome to the Halliburton
Sorry, gentlemen.
Highlands.
Sorry
Nice
about
to
that.
Nice to see you. Whatever
Nice to
you
meet you
do,
guys
hang
too.
on to the keys of that car. They're stealing those things down in the city there to be a heck.
Yeah.
So you're looking
Listen.
for some relief for your garage and plus the lot coverage. Is that about it?
Yes, sir.
Everyone had a chance to read these things, and where do we sit? I'm sure we have some questions for this gentleman. 1, 2, 3. Go ahead, John.
Well, I was wondering if you wanted to give Steve a chance to sort of tell his story first. We've been through the report. I personally have some concerns about the size of the garage relative to the lot. But I'd be interested, I haven't seen the property, so I'd be interested in getting his perspective.
It's all yours, Mr. Beavis. You can just tell us how you dreamt this up and how you're gonna make it work.
Well, it's always been a dream to have one that big, but just looking for good storage for boats, snowmobiles, all that kind of stuff, the camper trailer and whatnot. And to make it work with that setback over there, so I can still access the backyard where the septic will be, that's where I need the variance on the lot line and the center line setback.
Go ahead, Joe.
Okay, so I guess the main thing is there's no waterfront here, correct? And it's
Correct.
you're on the corner of two roads, the Benor Lake and the Jasmine Trail or whatever that is.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so the main size or the main reason for that garage is just a desire. It's not a business or anything like that. It's just basically storage.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Dream garage.
right. And I guess basically that's my only questions. It's I don't have a big concern other than maybe the size, but it's not near, you're not right next to a neighbor there and you're protected by the road. So I guess basically I don't have a lot of concerns with it.
Mr. Smith?
Well, I recognize that he's not close to the lake in terms of the structure, so that's a good thing. But still, the lot coverage at 17.2 versus the zoning bylaw requirement of 15%. That's a pretty big variance, and noting that it's driven by a garage over 3,000 square feet is a massive garage.
There's a big garage.
And so, because the clearances are relative to roads, they become less of a concern in terms of that setback. But my own view is that if you want a garage that big, you should have bought a bigger piece of property. As Steve mentioned, it being his dream. And so in fairness to the other folks that are in the area and anybody else, I think I have no issue with going a little bit beyond 15%, but 17.2, when you start talking a variance of that degree, without what I'll call a rationale related to the topography or something, that it's to me it's just excessive. And so I would prefer that the applicant be directed to come back with an approach that has a more moderately sized garage.
I think we should give him a number to come back with.
Okay.
Just as I may speak, Mr. Chair, through you, I concur with the comments made by Mr. Smith. And I would bring back to memory that we have dealt with garages before that are sizable to house, we'll call it this, and no insult to the applicant, but the applicant's toys and playthings. And they were applications whereby there was increased lot coverage above what was allowed. And when we suggested that they come back to the allowable lot coverage, that would be something that could readjust again the setbacks that are applied for. So I appreciate the gentleman might have these toys, but he could have considered the purchase of the toys at the time of knowing that he owned a lot that had some zoning restrictions to it. I think that a garage can be built that would not increase his lot coverage and would meet most of the setbacks. This is a very level piece of property. So I think that maybe the applicant should look at an adjustment in size to meet both, to come back to a more reasonable setback and come back to the 15%.
Jerry?
The only, I'd like to see a little bit of a variance there, and as Mr. Smith mentioned, maybe just a slight increase in coverage might give him a bit of breathing room there. So I may suggest maybe a 16% instead of 15, just for some sort of a.
I think we better give them a number.
I'm saying 16. I'm just going to suggest 16.
How do you feel about that?
I was going to propose 15.5, say that you come back with a new plan at 15.5. That's a small variance, minor variance, if you like, is the prior name of this committee. And I can't calculate what that, not in the live here in the meeting, I guess I could do the calculation, but it would be the proponent's requirement to do the calculation and say, okay, I understand the rationale for the distance from his cottage and the access to the septic and so forth. That's sound. But if you were reducing the size of that garage to get to 15.5, those required street setbacks are going to, decrease significantly also. And so it's still going to be a rectangular garage. It's going to be, I don't know what it's going to turn out to be, 2,600 square feet or something. Who knows? Somebody can do that calculation, but whatever it takes to get down to 15.5 is where I was coming from.
You want a decision today, you're probably going to have to live with 15.5%.
Is the lean-to part of the coverage area?
This is which?
That there's a
The
lean-to
garage
on
is
the one side.
the inside garage plus a lean-to.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Yeah.
So that
Yeah, it's the
that
total
counts as
lot
coverage,
coverage.
correct? Yeah. Okay, so if we were to get rid of or shrink the size of that lean-to, is that possible?
We don't care how you do it.
Okay, I just got to figure out the percentages, I guess, and come up with a bit smaller design.
We okay to prove that at 15.5?
Mr. Rouse has a comment.
Sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Chair. As you've been having discussion, I've been crunching some numbers behind the scenes, and at 15.5%, it would permit a 2,625 square foot garage. And yes, the lean-to is included in the lot coverage.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, and 2,600 square feet is still a massive garage, so it's not,
And that included the lean-to as well.
I built Curry Motors and the repair shop was about 3,500, 3,700 square feet, and there's cars going through there to beat the hell every day.
Yeah.
Mr. Bishop.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm just wondering how then, when we go with the figures that we're suggesting of 15.5, what adjustments, and he does it on the lean-to, what adjustments does it do to the setback that we were requested?
So what would be the problem with having the proponent go away, develop a new plan and come back next month if he's got his, plan consistent with that 15.5.
Yeah, he's willing to live with that. I saw him grinning there, but a while ago.
I'd be happier with 16, to be honest. I didn't realize that we were taking up that much coverage, but 16 would be a little nicer, but
Well, then what we're gonna do is defer it, okay? You go back to your drawing board and you know what we're looking for. And make sure you can make it work. Doesn't mean you gotta pay anymore. It doesn't mean anything of that. We don't get any of that money anyway. So.
it's not a bonus. What
But-
if we were able to go to the 16, what size does that leave me with? I can't get out my calculator because
I
I'm
don't
on my
know.
phone
The
here.
guy
You guys,
on the top left-hand corner of the screen up there is the one making those decisions. He's got a calculator there.
Yeah, if I may, through you, Chair, that at 16% lot coverage, that would permit a 2,750 square foot garage.
Well, I was raised in a house 950 square feet.
No garage.
Yeah, no garage.
I'd live in the garage if I could.
Mr. Chair, one of the reasons why I am trying to stay with this 15.5 that is suggested by Mr. Smith. I know that we're at the crossroads of an intersection, basically. And this garage is going to look like it's a commercial establishment when you drive by it. And visual impact in a cottage area is substantial. And that's one of the things we're trying to create in the township by virtue of the zoning bylaws is to keep the flavor. I think that this gentleman at the 15.5 can redraw his situation and come back to us and show us how he can jig that on the lot and give increased setbacks than what it was on the initial application. So I am in favor, Mr. Chairman, of a deferment with the applicant to come back to us with different drawings at the 15.5.
Jerry.
The applicant did mention about removing or part of the lean-to. My quick calculation, 12 times 60, 720 square feet. So if you were to remove that, I think you fall within that 15.5. And if you wanted to do that, I don't know if you want to defer for a month, because that holds you up from building and moving forward. But kind of the ball's in your court now, in my mind. So.
Okay, what do you got to say, bud?
I was going to say, if we can go ahead with removing the lean-to, that puts us down into the 15% lot coverage. That would gain us, I believe, 12 feet on the setbacks from the center line and the property line. I have no problem moving it over away from the property line if we have to remove that lean-to. If that could resolve everything today, I'd be good with that.
Good.
So that's the way we'll write it up.
So if you do the 15.5,
15
you
and a half.
can make it fit. By
Yeah.
Sunday.
Yeah. John?
Yeah, I don't see a plan here for the lean-to.
It's right on the site.
Hmm?
It's right on the garage plan.
Is that's on that little, it's on that little sketch in the fine print there? Okay, and it's just on the one side. It's not on the length of the thing. Is that fair? So we would still have the same required setback from the Lake Road as opposed to Jasmine, right?
Yes, sir. We would still meet the setback off Benor Lake Road at the 17.5, and we would just need a smaller variance from Jasmine for center line and property line.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. How I'm trying to so that lean-to, is that say it's 4 feet wide? 12. I'm looking at fine print. If I enlarge this thing, I can, oh, there it is, 12 feet. Yeah, so 12 and it's 60 feet deep. So you'd meet the 15% lot coverage. You wouldn't need a approval on the even 15.5 if you eliminate the lean-to.
But then you can build part of it.
which I'm happy with.
Okay, well, if you can do that calculation live here, and we can approve it today if somebody can come up with the numbers that we know are right.
So I'd make a motion that we change the one variance from 17, whatever, down to 15.5. And that we allow the variance from the setback from Menor Lake Road as requested, and just completely omit the one from Jasmine, because he should be able to meet that setback. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Meet Jasmine Road, we don't just deny it.
That's right. We would deny that.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll be able to meet the Jasmine. The lean-to is on the long side, which is the Jasmine Road side.
Right.
So that's only going to gain us 12 feet.
What did you need?
I don't even think I can pull my picture up. If I do, I'm going to lose you. Oh no, there you are.
You wanted 25.
Okay, so we're at 42.
42
and I
versus
guess we add-
57. So if you're going to take 12 off that, he would still need Jasmine approved at 54 feet as opposed to
Yes.
the required 57.4.
So I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, sure.
So that moves it away.
So that's the B variant.
B variance would change to
So-
44 feet. Somebody'd have to work out the meters for me, but it would become,
So it would change the variance to section 3.30 setback of Jasmine Road of, is it still 42 feet?
Jasmine, you're going to change to 54 feet
Yeah, 54.
as opposed to the required 57.4.
Well,
You gotta have, there's two measurements in there.
yeah, I realize
There's
that.
the 57.4, that changes to 54. Is that right?
Is that on C?
On B. And what about the 42-foot one? It changes.
We're really make sure we get this right.
42 feet on B is going to change to 54 feet.
Change 42 to 54.
42 to 54, if that's
Right.
eliminating.
Yes.
Benoit Lake Road wouldn't change.
It stays.
It would still be 57 feet versus 57.4 feet. So that's-
So how many meters is 54 feet?
Jeff can tell you.
Jeff will tell you that.
Spit her out, Jeffrey.
Yes, thank you. So 54 feet is 16 meters. The applicant's also
16 meters?
requesting an exterior side lot line setback on that same side. So that if the lean-to was to be removed, that would remove or add 12 feet to that 3.5 foot setback that's being requested. So that would make that a 15-foot exterior side lot line setback, which is 4.5 meters. So we would have to adjust two, but the one on Benor Lake Road would stay the same.
Which one's he talking about?
So the first variance is asking for an exterior side lot line setback of 1 meter. That's also on the Jasmine Road side. So there's two variances being sought on that side of the garage. But if the lean-to were to be removed, it would push it all back 12 feet away from Jasmine Road. So it would increase that setback to 15 feet from the side lot line and 54 feet from the center of Jasmine Road.
Which one's he on there? See?
So he's talking about A.
Okay,
All right.
variance section 5.2 to permit a private garage to have a minimum exterior side lot line setback of
He's going to change that to 15.2 feet.
15.2 feet.
Because again, you're adding the 12 feet to that one. And B, you've
And
already got changed.
just to round it, I would just say 15 feet, just to give the applicant a bit of wiggle room. So I would recommend at 4.5 meters, 15 feet.
Hit me again with that.
On A, make it 4.5 meters
4.5 meters as opposed to
as opposed to 1 meter.
4.5. Okay,
And that works out to 15 feet,
15 feet.
15.0 feet. Yeah.
And that, as opposed to required minimum, that's right, that's okay,
Right,
so,
okay.
so those two are changed and we're living at 15 and a half. Correct,
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes, although the lot coverage, Jeff, with this new calculation, with eliminating the lean-to, does he even need the, sorry, I got the mic on. Jeff, with eliminating that lean-to, does he need the lot coverage increase from 15 or will it, without that lean-to, eliminating the 720 feet, maybe you don't even need, because at 15.5, it was about 2,600 feet. And with that, you've taken 12, you've taken 700 feet off there. Maybe you don't need anything on the lot coverage.
That's correct. If you were to remove the 720 square feet from the lean-to, it would bring the lot coverage down to 14.8%.
There you go.
Well, so we just leave it, just leave it as it is. There's no variance provided there. The variance is denied really for the,
Yeah, it's denied for the lot coverage.
denied. The street setback for Benor Lake, nothing's changed there, right? On C?
See, there's no change.
Okay, we need a seconder for this. You're a mover.
I'm a move.
You're a seconder. David Bishop. It sounds like you'll be able to get out and buy your materials, man. Okay.
Excellent.
It's been moved and seconded that the committee's decision with respect to file D13 MV-2022-10 be recorded as follows. Better listen to this, Chris. Make sure you got a pencil there. The variance to section 5.2 to permit a private garage to have a minimum exterior sideline lot line setback of 4.5 meters or 15 feet, as opposed to the required minimum of 7.5 meters or 24.61 feet is granted. Variance to section 3.30 permit a private garage to have a minimum street setback of Jasmine Road of 16 meters or 54 feet, as opposed to required 17.5 meters or 57.4 feet granted. And a variance to section 3.30 to permit a private garage to have a minimum street setback Benor Lake of 17.37 meters or 57 feet, as opposed to required of 17.5 meters or 57.4 meters granted. You writing this all down, Chris? Variance to section 5.2 to permit a maximum lot coverage of 17.2% as opposed to required 15% is denied. Good, you're good to go. Any questions?
No, sir.
Well, can I put my boat at your garage?
For a small fee.
I guess the lean-to screwed my boat, eh?
Yeah. That was gonna be for your boat.
RV that I'd love to have.
Anyway, thank you very much for your cooperation and hope you're successful in what you're doing.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Enjoy your day.
Enjoy your day. Okay, moving right along here. What we got here now? We got one more garage, don't we? Well, surely we're not gonna argue too long on this thing, are we? Okay. It's straightforward. He wants it like his house. So we got Mr. Price. So you've been waiting a long time, man.
Very patiently.
Sorry to have so many windy people talking here today.
Not at all. To be honest, I've found it very interesting. This is
Just
the
tell us
first for me.
Just give us a quick synopsis of what you're proposing, and I don't think we have a whole lot of hassle with it.
Sure. So I'm hoping to build a garage, and I had Jodan at the lumber mart there in Halliburton do up some plans for me, and I submitted them for a permit and was told by the department that the roof, the peak was too high by about 6 feet. And so I'm hoping to get a minor variance to allow for that additional height. And the main reason really is just so I can keep the slope of the garage, the pitch of the roof, identical to the cottage property, just so the appearance of it is more tasteful, I suppose, if I could put it that way. I know that with garages, sight lines and the view from the neighboring properties is important. And I've learned also from watching a couple of the previous applications that the view from the lake is something that is considered as well. And I actually hadn't thought about that, but I have since. I've been waiting for my chance to speak. As far as the neighboring properties are concerned, I currently only have one neighbor who has a cottage on his property, and that's Danny and his wife, Michelle. They have submitted an email letter. I'm hoping that the committee has it. And Danny Stern, my neighbor, has indicated that he has no issues with the additional height of the roof. It's the way our properties are laid out, it wouldn't affect his view in any way. And in the summer months when there's leaves on the trees, it would probably be difficult for him to see the garage at all. The other neighboring property to the north currently doesn't have a structure on it, but the location that's cleared for a structure on that property is at the northernmost side of that property. They've already put the stairs down to their dock at that northernmost side. And from that location as well, they wouldn't be able to see the garage at any time of year. And so that sort of leaves the lake. I believe the garage is set back far enough from the lake rather, and up a slope. And the materials that I've submitted in support of the application include sort of a color overhead. I guess it's the Google sort of satellite view image. I believe it might have been I might have received that in the real estate package when we purchased the property. But there's quite a bit of vegetation, trees, large mature trees on that slope working its way up to the garage. And fortunately, the original builder at this site maintained quite a broad sort of ribbon of green between the cottage and the lake. And so even from the lake, the garage would be considerably obstructed. And I think even when it can be seen, that additional amount on the peak, I don't believe at least would cause any concern or look out of place in any way to anyone passing by on the lake. So that's the hope.
That's the whole story, nothing else, eh?
That's it.
I come from a little town called Penetanguishene, and it even makes sense to me. You want the garage to conform with your house, like you don't want some little slant roof on it. So has anybody got a motion? Anybody got any problems with it? Daryl?
I don't have any problems, and I'd be willing to make a motion that we go ahead with the requested variance.
John Smith, seconded.
Happy to second that. And one question I wanted to actually ask Jeff on this.
Yeah.
Just for the public record, I think this makes lots of sense. It's a modest sized garage to begin with, 30 by 36 feet. We're talking roughly 1,000 square feet. So that's not excessive. It's well back from the lake. It's well back from the side lot lines. The idea of making it consistent with the cottage, lots of merits in every regard to this proposal. And I just wanted to, Jeff, if this was an application to build a 2-story garage, what would be the height restriction?
So the maximum height requirement for a 2-story garage is actually 9.5 meters, so it would comply. I mean, it wouldn't be before you today.
I mean, that's why this is, it is such a minor variance. It's almost a technicality. If you had been saying, I want to build a 2-story garage, you could have had it much higher than the 24 feet you're talking about. But because it's only a 1-story garage, we're saying, oh, you can only have it 18 feet. It's kind of bizarre in terms of the requirement, but I wanted that on the public record, and so nobody can complain about the size of this garage.
Well, you bring up a couple of good points, and 2 doors down from me is a guy building a garage, and it is huge. It's 4,000 square feet. And it's 2-story. And so the top is also equal to that, but he's attaching it to his house. There is no limit to how high you can build it or how big you can build it right now, as long as it's attached to the house. I didn't know that. Anyway, we'll be there for the opening when you get her built.
You're all invited.
So it's been moved by Gerald Walker and seconded by John Smith that the committee's decision with respect to file D13 MV 2022-15 be recorded as follows. The variance provision is section 5.2 to permit a 1-story accessory building to have a maximum structure height of 7.3 meters or 24 feet, as opposed to the permitted 5.5 meters or 18 feet. Granted. And that's carried. And you have yourself a great day.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Have a nice afternoon.
You're welcome. I need a mover and a seconder to adjourn. Moved by Gerald.
Need a second for that.
Says here I gotta have one. I didn't think you did. I didn't think you did either.
Robert Clearly.
I'm gonna put down. The guy that said we don't need it, he's the seconder. And it is now is it 1:15? I guess we
There,
may.
you've earned your $60.
Hey, you got a raise, man.
We got raised.
You
You got a raise.
100.
Well, don't tell my spouse.
That's all right. My wife doesn't know either.